my surprise, for a religious text that teaches you compassion and love, I managed to find and reappropriate quite a lot of tactics that we can now directly apply to Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, a game where a bunch of brain-dead people try to massacre each other with the spite of 50 Babylonian orphans. So today we're gonna officially find out whether King James Parchment could be successfully adopted as a guerrilla warfare guidebook. I will also try not to use the same winning strategy more than once because I enjoy misery and pain. On the first level we got Mongolian invasion forces, Roman shaft handlers, and a bunch of degenerates. They definitely know what they're doing, but they also don't know that we studied the Exodus, we opened the 7 seals, and we deciphered the Dead Sea Scrolls. So now we can implement the sacred Hebrews as a conflict resolution strategy. Among all the soldiers there were 700 select troops who were left-handed, each of whom could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. That sounds very impressive, but unfortunately Tubbs is racist against left-handed people, so they're not represented in the game. But what we can do is to deploy a grid of Neolithic cavemen ICBMs and see what happens. By spamming exactly 62 stone slinging enthusiasts, we accidentally created something that Lockheed Martin could only dream of: crack-filled crowdsourced war crime. By channeling their 200,000 years old ancestors' wrath, they managed to induce 62 thermal cranial deformations per second. And not only that, but we also get a W. Need I say more? 100 out of 10. This is already my favorite tactic and we have only started. But unfortunately we can't use it ever again, so already miss it. The next battle takes place on top of the Twin Towers. We have people who round up their height, weaponized V-boos, and some British before they decided to stick with the knives. I will strike the water that is in the Nile. It will be turned to blood, frogs, locusts, pestilence. It took some real creative genius to transform this into tactics, but for this one we have to use units that are able to spread syphilis and bubonic plague on our enemies. So I spawned a bunch of medieval biological warfare units like Witch Doctor, Pharaoh, and instantly they start recreating events of Europe in 1446 by spreading their genomes and everyone in their line of sight. The British are doing a great job by masterfully penetrating samurai from the back and killing like a half of them with friendly fire. They also killed our Pharaoh, but I didn't see him do anything useful either way, so might as well just give it up. Only the Witch Doctor managed to stay alive and tongue a whole bullet with his torso like a Balkan pensioner. Turns out Witch Doctor's real strength lies in turning our enemies green and radicalizing them into adopting extremist school of thought, resulting in them killing each other. Overall it's a fun one, but not as fun as 62 stone slinging war criminals, so I would say it's a 6 out of 10. I feel like if the British could actually shoot, maybe everything would have turned out differently. On the third level we got weaponized Walmart Pinocchio, a squad of Justinian Scrotum Reapers, and 2 Japanese Jason Bournes. You have heard that it was said an eye for an eye, but I say to you, do not resist an evil person. Our strategy for this battle relies on weaponizing Stockholm Syndrome in real time, so I spawned the least menacing looking troops that are not even capable of wielding any weapons due to their political views. By rapidly closing the distance, our high velocity tier 3 kidnappers managed to execute an orthodox move that I officially named parasocial situationship. Unfortunately, it might look like the tactic is not working, but fortunately what you just witnessed was only a proof of concept. For the second attempt, I created an army of 38 feral perverts to prove to you that anybody can become your friend if you try hard enough. By violently grabbing this man's penis, our situationship berserkers kidnap him straight into heaven and generate cascade of openings that the rest of our aroused gunners take advantage of. And surely after a couple more unsanctioned kidnappings, our love givers decide to aggressively part this man's booty cheeks like Moses parting the Red Sea. By subjecting him to continuous touching without his consent, he ultimately decides to give up all his will to breathe, and we win this battle. I think we just violated Geneva Conventions that people haven't even invented. But on the other hand, that was a beautiful victory worth 8 out of 10, so it doesn't matter. We got avatars, extras, and the dicks Moby left behind, and the British. I want to say in advance that this level was like going through 9 circles of purgatory and discovering 9 more after that. Maybe Dante should write another book. I've used probably all of the tactics from the Big J, but everything led to less than satisfying results. A white horse, a red horse, a black horse, and an ashen horse, and his name was Death. I tried to recreate 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and then the Lord rained down brimstone and fire from heaven. I tried to rain down fire on them. He tore the line apart with his bare hands. That's crazy. I tried to employ the power of 100 midgets and boxers, but the constant reason for our failure were the people who invented Harry Potter. But that is until I've challenged the swag of monogamy and my relationship with Zeus. 2 by 2 they came into the arc. This tactic relies on spawning 2 versions of 1 unit. According to lore, the pair has to consist of 1 man and 1 woman. However, there is no way to choose gender, so our team will consist of proud homosexuals. We got Zeus and some OSHA exempt shield hobos to cover them up. Without an exaggeration, it was an eschatological event because the lightning was propagating from one asshole to another, and even when one Zeus was counterplayed by Somali pirates. The other Zeus unleashed 3000 years of Mediterranean anger and clutched this battle. Finally something that worked, but it's important to not be biased. It's not a crazy tactic or anything, but Noah was a cool guy. According to lore, he also invented alcohol, so just because of that 5 out of 10. Some D-Day shit going on in there. Knights, kings, Norwood 5 keepers, ball cut autists, and some Japanese. Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits. This one is straightforward. We have to use 13 units in a religiously capitalistic way. One guy's worth must be bigger than the other 12. In our case, Jesus will be a massive Korean Vacha, and disciples are gonna be annoying assholes that won't let our enemies advance. Unfortunately, our crossbow guys have an IQ of 30 and bred Victorian children, so they shoot the dark matter instead of our enemies. But our Cobra specialist got the situation under control. Despite the early embarrassment, crossbowmen redeemed themselves of their sins and turned our enemies into consequences. Overall, a very satisfying and efficient strat. Shout out Matthew, 7 out of 10. Here we got Henry's Ops, Renaissance Paul Walkers, Asian lore, and a bunch of 2012 hipsters. Lazarus come forth. According to lore, that's what Jesus said to respawn Lazarus. Also according to lore, no one knows how he died in the first place. So our tactic for this one is to use necromancers or units that are dead but alive. The ballistic brain damage unit instantly performs a self-sacrifice, followed by feudal Mario Karts doing the same thing. Now all it's left to do is for our necromancers to kill the rest. However, we didn't have to do anything because pretty much everyone on this map ended up killing themselves. Morally sad, but technically it's a flawless victory, certified 8 out of 10. On this map we got some more hipsters, but honestly it doesn't even matter who's against us because they're gonna be under us. When the trumpet sounded, the army shouted, the wall collapsed. All we have to do is to use some shouters. Without much thinking, I spammed 12 Dragonborns and they violently transfer a catastrophic amount of kinetic force, resulting in our enemies realigning their Z-axis straight into the Satan sphincter. I'm feeling like a solid 9 out of 10 on this one, not gonna lie. This map is the equivalent of putting 10 Hitlers in one room. We got Mount Olympus Epstein and Korean genocide machine. Not a blacksmith could be found in the land. This strategy relies on bringing back the good old days of the Paleolithic era, when any problem ranging from food scarcity to relationships could be solved with a blunt force trauma to the head. I spawned a bunch of Homo erectus and a couple of stoners. They instantly send all of the hipsters back to Boston's Valhalla. But what's more interesting is that our club master is apparently a 200-year-old virgin who has developed the power of telekinesis and is able to wield his club with the sheer power of his one brain cell. So he manages to turn his Gersey stick into an unsanctioned Jericho precision strike that causes permanent encephalopathy in Zeus as soon as it hits his prefrontal cortex. As if it were not enough, he also knocked the Holy Spirit out of the last shieldman alive. Very brutal tactic, 6 out of 10. It works, but I think this tactic is very niche and is not applicable to many real-life situations like college. On this level we are surrounded from every cardinal direction by vitamin C deficient units, but honestly it doesn't even matter because we're gonna be using a tactic that might rival the power of the apocalyptic stone slinging autism. My name is Legion, for we are many. For this one I found a unit with the best price to quantity ratio, a piece of shit Goblin. So all we have to do is to spam them until we spend an entire GDP of Lithuania. However, with great power comes great responsibility. By having so many green degenerates in one place, they also managed to massacre my FPS, so now the game looks like a PowerPoint presentation about consequences of having unprotected sex with 376 goblins. Ignoring the consequences, that is a very fun and versatile tactic. Certified 376 out of 10. Here we got some Thermopylae Waterloo. Honestly, the biggest problem with this one are the 3 lumberjack Terrachats and Carolingian colonial snipers on top of the walls. Let us confuse their language so they will not understand one another. According to lore, Jesus prevented construction of the Babel Tower by forcing everyone to speak a different language. So with this tactic we can only use one unit from each faction. By employing the power of diversity in our army where no one understands each other, I spawned straight up some bullshit that leads to us losing 153 times. However, eventually I land on the right combination of ethnicities, particularly Chris Hemsworth and Egyptian. We got some more people in there, but they're not Chris Hemsworth. With our immaculate setup we spontaneously combust all of the snipers off the walls. Then Thor and Thor but Egyptian enter a state of bilateral demographic violence and turn the siege into pacification speedrun. The rest of our people unfortunately had to experience the afterlife, but who cares, they're not Chris Hemsworth. Overall the strategy works, but the only problem is that it didn't work for like 100 of attempts, making it 1 out of 100. Another siege-like level, but this one has an opportunity for double penetration. We got skeletons but from the Vatican, and average Japanese man. The Lord hurled The Lord hurled... This is a very difficult quote to pronounce, so just read it. I spawn all of the units that are able to turn water into unauthorized H2O payloads. However, the real strength of this tactic lies in gaslighting our enemies into thinking that they're French, leading to an immediate preemptive surrender. The rest of the battle was pretty much a controlled representation of a pitbull and toddler's power dynamics. Not much to say here, it just works. Strong 10 out of 10. We got Castlevania in there. I found it very interesting that the entire level follows a common theme of the First Crusade units, and then we have Scurvy carrying rumors just for the love of the game. Unfortunately, the pool of available tactics becomes smaller, so we have to think bigger. Ehud stretched out his left hand and thrust the sword into his belly. According to lore, Ehud assassinated an abyss man so hard that the blade got sucked into his belly. With that being said, I tried to employ Mossad interns only strat, thinking that they will perform miracles of extrajudicial espionage in close quarter combat. And it looked promising at first, but then it became disappointing at second. Two female bears came out of the woods and tore them apart. To my surprise, I couldn't find a bear in the game, so I had to improvise and use a mammoth, raptors and a centaur. Once again the tactic looked promising again, but unfortunately the mammoth was triple XXL obese, so he got stuck in a doorway and died of unfathomable boredom. He tore the line apart with his bare hands. With this tactic we're not allowed to use any weapons, which might not sound promising, but trust me. I spam a bunch of schmalugles, guy who finally waited for rapture, and some type C suckers. By doing this we create an unstoppable force of 20 smurfs whose strategy relies on jumping on our enemies, demobilizing them, and creating an opening for our vampires that suck them off until they die. I feel like Edison because we just invented something equally life-changing, deep throat peacekeeping. Eventually the doubt started to creep in when there were only two schmalugles left alive and no one could suck our enemies off anymore. However, our goons adjusted their strategy to repeatedly punch this man's penis until he died of testicular concussion. Needless to say, glorious victory just took place in front of our eyes. 8 out of 10. Here we got an entire North Korean Iron Dome. My god sent his angel and shut the lion's mouths. To save more versatile tactics for later, I cross-referenced Revelation and blew up every one of these contraptions with an Archangel Michael. We got an easy win, but it's a 5 out of 10 no matter how you look at it. The strat is half satisfying and very situational. On the next level, our enemies are weaponizing our deep throat peacekeeping invention and early access tomahawk. Ehud stretched out his left hand and thrust the sword into his belly. I still didn't give up my attempts to make Assassin's strat viable, but I think I ended up making it not viable. Then the Lord rained down brimstone and fire from heaven. With this tactic we can only use units that can deal damage with fire or explosions, so we can do some gesturing. By spamming a bunch of level 1 drone operators on top of the walls, they're able to unleash an entire pre-industrial ordnance on our enemies. However, while they managed to avoid being sucked off, they decided to terminally blow each other off. Nonetheless, I trust in this tactic like JFK trusted convertibles, so I try once again, and this time the entire battlefield turns into a Third Testament. I'm feeling like a 6 out of 10 on this one. It's not a bad tactic, however it's not the best either. The fact that it's satisfying saves it, but otherwise it's very risky, so don't repeat it at home. To be frank, this map is actually Satan's asshole. They got Sheol shooters, the worst thing to be ever invented by Greeks after grooming, and guys who are teams when it's 90 degrees. When people say it doesn't get any worse than that, they lie, because eventually your life choices will lead you to level 15 of the simulation campaign of Totally Accurate Battle Simulator. I tried billions of various tactics on this map like I'm investing in Israel, and they all resulted in misery, pain and a life-threatening cortisol spike until one man of you shall chase 1,000, for the Lord your God is he who fights for you. For this tactic I spawned the most overpowered unit I could find in the range of a Brooklyn studio apartment. 3 seconds later this unremarkable looking guy metamorphosed into Satan himself, who brought pandemonium to an axe fight. I'm not really sure how to feel about the fact that we won with the help of demonic powers on our side, but honestly Nestle have done worse. 7 out of 10. On this level we are visiting Rome, but locals look extremely suspicious and hostile. The fact that Italians are carrying axes is especially concerning. The Nephilim were unearthed in those days, mighty men of renown. According to lore, the Nephilims were enigmatic giant people. Thankfully we have a giant skeleton and samurai on our side with a bunch of green Larry lobsters. Despite them employing a bold strategy of self-litification in the middle of combat, the rest of the battle actually goes very smooth, mostly thanks to the giant Japanese man who, instead of swinging his katana, decided that the best approach for this fight would be to repeatedly do front flips on top of our enemies and maximize the amount of terminal spinal compressions. And let me tell you that he was absolutely right. I think it's a great tactic that might work in a variety of situations, but despite that I feel like Vanguard, like there's something missing, and I can't really figure out what, so the maximum I can do is 8 out of 10. Here we got all types of Asians, we got Buddhists, we got Japanese, we got Korean pocket hate crime machines, and the guys. A white horse, a red horse, a black horse, and an ashen horse, and his name was Death. A straight up up classic from the Bible. For this one we have to make use of 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. In our case this will be represented by a 65-million-year-old warlord, croissant cavalry, Washington Irving nightmare, and a Genghis Khan grandson. With such level of diversity, our first attempt ends up on our guys decisively performing a cliff diving maneuver into the back of the backrooms. The second attempt does look a bit more promising for the first 5 seconds of the battle, however everyone dies and the French just does a French thing. That leaves us with the lonely and innocent Mongolian Stalin, who despite all of the chances performs a biblical level of an acrobatic miracle in front of our eyes and finishes the last guy with a low kick. This gotta be one of the worst tactics on our list, ultimate bio-waste tier, but the fact that Mongolian horse could pull this off ascends the strategy from -1 out of 10 to a 9. You could say that we got lucky and therefore this tactic should stay at -1, but what if we didn't get lucky? Unluck got us.